Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is part 3 of Twitter Sentiment Analysis project series. In this video, I have provided the link in the description to download the entire code of the project, and I will be explaining how to install and run the project. Also, I'll explain the working of the code as much as possible. If you have any doubts, do mention it in the comment section. I'll try to explain them in the subsequent videos. And finally, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. I'll be posting more such videos on simple project and code explanation. So do subscribe and support me. Now I'll explain how to run the project. So the first step is to download the file from the link that I have provided in the description. It contains the entire code of the project. It's a zip file, so you'll have to unzip it first. Next, make sure you have Python 3.6 or greater version installed on your laptop. Along with this, you also need to add Python path in your system environment variables. There are certain Python libraries that needs to be installed for the application to run. So these are the 3 libraries that we will be needing for our project. And the procedure to install these libraries is by opening your command prompt and typing this syntax and press enter. So the syntax is pip space install space the library name. For example, if you want to install the Tweepy library, you have to enter pip install Tweepy and press enter. Similarly, if you want to install Flask, then enter pip install Flask and press enter. So follow the same procedure to install all the 3 libraries and make sure you have installed all these 3 libraries on your system. Next, make sure you have all the 4 keys copied from your Twitter developer account. Please watch part 2 of the series if you haven't created your Twitter developer account yet. We'll be needing that for our project. So these are the 4 keys that we'll be needing for our project. So make sure you have all these 4 keys available with you. Next, open the project on any IDE of your choice. I'll be using VS Code. Finally, you have to run the app.py file. Here I am in my VS Code editor and I have opened app.py file. Now I will run this. Once the app starts running, you'll get this message. You can either copy paste this entire link into your browser or you can just do Control and click to open this application. Now I have copied this link. Now I'll paste the link on my browser. The project is now open and working. One more important thing to note is that the keys that you generate by clicking on consumer keys has to be copied to these 2 variables in the app.py code, consumer key and consumer secret. Similarly, the keys that you generate by clicking on access token and secret has to be copied to these 2 variables in the app.py code, access token and access token secret. Before running the code, please make sure you have pasted the correct keys corresponding to each of these variables. All you have to do is replace this X with the actual code that you have received from Twitter developer account within single quotations. Only after that, run the application. Now I'll explain the directory structure of the project. Within the project folder, you'll find 2 other folders and 1 Python script file, that is app.py. App.py contains the Python code to run the application. Next, we have 2 different folders named static and templates. Templates folder contains all the HTML files. Index.html will be the home page of our application or the main page. Result.html is the page used to display the result of phrase level sentiment analysis, and result1.html is the page used to display the result of sentence level sentiment analysis. To understand what phrase level and sentence level sentiment analysis is, please watch part 1 of the series. Next, static folder contains all the static contents that we will be requiring for our project, like the styling files and the image that we'll be using for our application. Here within the CSS folder, you'll find two other files. I have used indexstyle.css file just to style the index.html page, and resultstyle.css, I have used that to style both result and result1.html. Finally, make sure you don't rename or move any of these files. It will be easier that way. Now let us try to understand app.py code. I have actually used the same code provided in Geeks for Geeks website. I have made few changes to this code to fit for my application. So if you want to get a better understanding or more information on this topic, you can visit this site and have a look at it. I have provided the link in description. Coming back to our code, there are many different methods that I have used in the project. I'll explain each of the methods working. Let us start by understanding what main method does. So the execution begins from main method. I have taken 4 different variables to store the values of the keys that we obtained from Twitter developer account. All you need to do is copy the keys from Twitter developer account and paste it here within the single quotation. Next, in these 3 lines, we are trying to authenticate ourselves to the Twitter API. These same keys are used for authentication process as well. After successful authentication, Twitter API object will get created and the object will be stored in this variable API. So throughout the code, I'll be using the same variable to refer to the Twitter API. If the authentication fails, then this error message will be displayed. Next, we have app.debug is equal to true. Here, app refers to the Flask application that I have declared right here. Next, we have app.static folder is equal to static. This is just to specify the name of the folder that contains static contents for our application. Coming back, we have app.run host is equal to localhost. This will run our application on the local machine or the local host. Now let us move to the routes. So this is the home route or the default route. What this code means is that when we reach the home route, index.html page will be rendered. Let me show this to you once. So this is the home page of our application. This is nothing but index.html web page. As you can see here, I'll enter a / and press enter. This is bringing me back to the same home page. This just means that when we reach the home route, index.html page is rendered. Now let me try phrase level sentiment analysis. This is the result page of phrase level sentiment analysis. As you can see over here, we have reached / predict route. When we reach / predict route, results.html page will be rendered. Now let me try out sentence level sentiment analysis. This is the result page of sentence level sentiment analysis. As you can see here, we have reached / predict one route. So we'll be using predict one route to display the result page of sentence level sentiment analysis, and we'll be using predict route to display the result page of phrase level sentiment analysis. Now coming back to the code, as I said earlier, we'll be using / predict route for phrase level sentiment analysis. When we reach the predict route, this piece of code will get executed. It first checks if the request method is post. If yes, we will fetch user input values by using form controls and transfer it to Python variables. For example, request.form of query. This will fetch values from input tag from index.html page, which has name attribute as query. Since I am using a form action, so when the user clicks on the submit button, whatever the value that he has entered in this input tag will be associated with the name query. And the same value will be transferred to our Python code and it will store in this particular variable. And the same happens for request.form of num. So the input tag which has name attribute as num, this value will be transferred back to the Python code to this variable. Next, we are calling getTweets method. I'll explain getTweets method later on. Basically, what the getTweets method does is that it takes query string and count as an input, and it will find all the tweets that has query string in it, and it will predict each of the tweets sentiment and return back the predicted values to our variable right over here. The returned value will be in the form of list of dictionary elements. So I have given here an example of list of dictionary elements. As you can see, each of the dictionary elements has two components. One is the text and the other one is sentiment. So text is nothing but the tweet itself, and the sentiment is nothing but the predicted sentiment of that particular tweet. Finally, we will render results.html page. Along with that, we'll be sending fetch tweets result to it. As you can see here in results.html page, there is a variable called results. So the value for this variable will be sending that from our Python code. So whatever the value that is present in the fetch tweets variable will be passed on to the result variable in result.html. Next, we are doing a for each on result, and we are printing the tweet and its corresponding sentiment in a tabular format. Next, we have predict1 route. As I mentioned earlier, predict1 route is used for sentence level sentiment analysis. Here again, similar to the predict route, we are taking a statement as an input from the user and storing that in a variable called text. Next, we are applying text blob method on the input text. So to understand how the text blob works, I'll show you that with an example. So this is the command prompt. First, I am importing text blob. Now let me take a variable answer is equal to text blob of good morning. Let us see what answer variable has. Answer variable has an object of text blob. Now I'll do an answer dot sentiment. So this is returning two values. One is the polarity and the other one is subjectivity. The value that we need to concentrate is the polarity value. Now let me take another example. Now I'll do a text blob of bad morning. Now let us see what answer.sentiment returns. It is returning a polarity value of minus 0.699. Let me take another example. Now we'll do text blob of just morning. So answer.sentiment is returning a polarity value of 0.0. What we can understand here is that when the statement has a positive sentiment, then the polarity value is greater than 0. Similarly, when the statement has a negative sentiment, the polarity value is decreasing less than 0. In this case, it is reaching minus 0.699. And when the statement is neutral, the polarity remains at 0. So we are using the same logic for our project as well. We have implemented the same logic in our code as well. We are first finding out what the polarity value is, and then we are checking if the polarity value is greater than 0. If it is greater than 0, then we are classifying the sentiment as positive. If the polarity is equal to 0, then we are classifying the sentiment as neutral. Otherwise, we will be classifying the sentiment as negative. Finally, we will render result1.html page. Along with that, we are passing the input text message and the predicted sentiment. Here in result1.html, we are using two different variables, msg and result, and the values for these two variables, we are passing it through our Python code. Now let us understand how getTweets method works. It takes three different arguments: API, query, and count. So by default, I have set the count value as 5. Here I am converting the count value into an integer value. This is just to make sure that we only have integer as a value for count. Next, I am declaring a list over here with the name of tweets, and this is the variable that we will be finally returning from this method. As I had mentioned earlier, the result of getTweet method will be in the form of a list of dictionary elements. And that is the reason why I have declared a list over here as well. So for each of the tweet, I will store the text component and the sentiment component in the form of a dictionary. And finally, I will append these dictionary values to the list. And that is how we will finally be getting a list of dictionary elements. So I'll return the same variable back to the calling method. This is the syntax to call for Twitter API. Here we are specifying the API to do a search. We are also passing the query string as an argument, and we are mentioning the language as English, and we are specifying the tweet mode as extended. This tweet mode makes sure that we get the entire tweet, not just a part of it. Finally, we are limiting the total number of tweets to the count specified by the user. Next, we are doing a for each on each of the tweets returned by the Twitter API. And for each of the tweets, we are extracting the full text value of the tweet. And then to get the sentiment of the tweets, we are calling one more method called getTweetSentiment. Now let us see what getTweetSentiment looks like. So this is the method definition of getTweetSentiment. As you can see, it takes one argument, which is nothing but the tweet. I have actually mentioned here two ways in which we can get the sentiment of these tweets. One is by using the naive Bayes analyzer, and one is without using any type of analyzer. You can use either, but since this code without specifying any analyzer is much quicker than using the naive Bayes analyzer, so I'll be sticking on to this code. But there is a slight change when you use the naive Bayes analyzer. So instead of getting the polarity of the tweet, you will get the classification itself. And the classification can either be positive or negative. You cannot get a neutral classification in this method. As you can see here, I am doing a text blob method on the clean tweets. Clean tweets is again a separate method that I have declared over here. Clean tweet basically just removes unwanted space, hashtags, or any special characters from the extracted tweets. So it uses basic regular expression to do that. So we are applying the text blob method on the returned clean tweets. Again, same as earlier, we are extracting the polarity value of the answer and checking if the value is greater than 0. If it's greater than 0, then the sentiment is positive. If the polarity is equal to 0, then the sentiment is neutral. And finally, if the polarity is less than 0, then the sentiment will be negative. So this is the logic behind getTweetSentiment. If you like to use the naive Bayes analyzer code, all you need to do is that comment these lines of code and uncomment the naive Bayes analyzer one. Just save this code and run it, and you'll be able to get the same result. After getting the tweet and the sentiment in the text and sentiment part of our dictionary, we will append the same into our tweets list. The same process will happen for each of the tweets. Finally, by the end of this loop, We will get a list of dictionary elements, and the dictionary contains all the tweets and its corresponding sentiments. This is the overall functioning of app.py code. Thanks a lot for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video.